This story was sent by a viewer who wishes to remain anonymous. He claims that after that night, he has never been able to sleep normally again. No more talking, let's start the story. Summer in the Atlanta metropolitan area isn't a gentle season. It arrives in late May with a humid, pressing heat that settles over the landscape like a wet wool blanket, and it doesn't leave until October. By August, the heat index in the greater Atlanta region routinely climbs above 105 degrees. The air carries a thickness that makes even the simple act of walking from a car to a building feel like a physical effort. The trees along the suburban highways hold perfectly still, just because there's no breeze to move them. The asphalt in parking lots go soft in the afternoon sun. People move differently in that heat. Slower, more deliberately, as if the air itself is pushing back. Douglasville, Georgia sits 20 miles west of downtown Atlanta, and there, along the commercial highway corridor, sat Dusty's Roadhouse. It was a family-owned barbecue restaurant that had been operating since 2003. People drove from all over the suburbs just to eat there. The owner, Dusty Mercer, had built it through 16 years of 6-day weeks and stubborn, patient commitment. Outside, the thick, unmoving afternoon air baked the pavement. Inside, the kitchen belonged to Marcus Webb, 41 years old, a father of 3. He was a quiet, methodical man who ran the kitchen with a calm efficiency. Dusty trusted Marcus so completely that he gave him a key to the building and total authority over the kitchen. Marcus was the kind of man who would close down the restaurant on a Friday night and still be up to coach his son's Little League team on Saturday morning, sometimes without even going home to sleep first. August 22nd, 2019 was a Thursday. Thursdays at Dusty's were reliably busy, fueled by a popular smoked half-chicken special. The reservation book was full. Dusty Mercer was out of town, taking his first vacation in 2 years down in Savannah. He'd left Marcus in charge with complete confidence. Everything was in order. Or almost everything. Under the kitchen floor, accessed through a concrete cleanout port near the back wall, was the restaurant's grease trap. In a barbecue operation, rendering pork fat, beef drippings, and frying oil flow constantly into the dark. The trap is a critical piece of infrastructure designed to capture this thick, congealing sludge before it enters the municipal sewer system. The trap required regular pumping every 8 weeks. The last service had been attempted on July 3rd, but the technician found a damaged access cab, capped it as best he could, and left. In mid-July, Dusty called to reschedule, but a miscommunication at the waste company left the appointment pending. By late July, a note sat on Dusty's desk. Grease trap, confirm rescheduled. 6 times he looked at that note. 6 times he mentally deferred it. Day by agonizing day, the organic material accumulated. By August 22nd, the trap was severely, dangerously overfull. An overfull grease trap doesn't simply stop working quietly. The grease backs up into the plumbing, coating the drain lines, and beneath the floorboards, a rising, invisible threat begins. Decomposing organic waste in a sealed, warm underground container produces lethal gases, methane and hydrogen sulfide. For a week, the kitchen had been draining slowly. Now the floor drain was backing up completely. Water and grease residue were pooling across a third of the kitchen floor. A slip hazard, a sanitation problem, and there was a smell. Marcus positioned a box fan near the drain, assuming it would help, because an unidentifiable, terrible odor was rising from the floor. They thought it was just a severe nuisance. No one realized it was toxic hydrogen sulfide gas. The fatal disconnect between what they believed was happening and the deadly reality creeping up around their ankles was absolute. All they knew was that the drain smelled terrible, the floor was wet, and they had a full restaurant to feed in a matter of minutes. At 5:45 p.m., Marcus made a fateful decision. He decided to manually clear the blockage to save the dinner service. He figured if he could get the port open and clear the block, they could get through the night and properly pump the trap when Dusty returned. There was no turning back. Marcus sent the dishwasher to retrieve the heavy pipe wrench from the maintenance kit. He crouched down near the back wall, locating the concrete cleanout port and gripping the metal disc. The damaged threads had practically cemented shut with weeks of grease and debris. Marcus applied extreme force, pulling against the unyielding metal, his muscles straining, working it blindly for 4 agonizing minutes, as his crew prepped food just feet away. The cap broke loose. The trap was so severely overfull and the gas pressure inside so immense that it triggered an immediate, violent eruption. A pressurized geyser of dark, caustic, acidic sludge expelled forcefully from the opening, spraying directly into Marcus's face, his chest, and his bare arms. Marcus fell backward away from the opening, gagging and clutching his face. He was instantly blinded. The intense, concentrated odor of hydrogen sulfide hit everyone in the kitchen simultaneously. Lamont, a line cook, grabbed him. "What is that? What does that smell?" Lamont cried out. Marcus couldn't answer. He was on his hands and knees in the dense pooling gas, suffocating, struggling to draw a single breath of clean air. Lamont acted on pure instinct. He grabbed Marcus under the arms, hoisted him up from the toxic vapor pooling on the floor, and dragged him backward toward the exit, shouting for everyone to get out of the kitchen. "Out! Out! Out!" The prep cook and the dishwasher dropped everything they were holding and ran into the parking lot. They escaped the rising gas just in time. At 5:58 p.m., Lamont called 911. The dispatcher asked if there was a gas smell. Lamont paused, remembering the thick odor, and said yes. The dispatcher immediately upgraded the response to a hazmat situation. Inside, the dining room manager calmly evacuated all 37 guests into the sweltering evening air. None of them knew the lethal concentration of gas building just beyond the kitchen doors. At the hospital, the immediate, desperate priority was Marcus's eyes. The caustic material, weeks of rotting, acidic organic waste, had caused severe chemical burns to both corneas. The delicate tissue of his eyelids and the skin on his forearms were chemically scorched. In the emergency department, his eyes were subjected to extensive, agonizing irrigation, flushed continuously with massive volumes of saline in a desperate bid to strip away the acid. Marcus was left with near total vision loss in his left eye during those first weeks. He endured a constant, intense burning sensation that he could only describe as having sand made of fire in both eyes. The question the specialists couldn't immediately answer was how much of this darkness would be permanent. The week after the incident, the grease trap was finally pumped. The damaged access port was fully repaired. The cost to fix the port was exactly $300. Dusty Mercer installed a digital tracking system to ensure a missed appointment could never slip through the cracks again. The cost of the software was $500. Marcus Webb's left eye recovered to only 45% of its pre-injury vision. He required surgery to replace his scarred, damaged corneal tissue with donor tissue. The cost of his cornea transplant surgery was $62,000. 14 weeks later, Marcus returned to work. He's okay, but not the way he was before. He wears prescription glasses now with tinted lenses on bright days because of his severe sensitivity to light. He administers immunosuppressive eye drops 4 times a day, every day, for the rest of his life. Yet in 2022, he stood on the third baseline, squinting through the harsh afternoon sun, and didn't miss a single game coaching his son's Little League All-Star team. Dusty's Roadhouse remains open. In the back hallway, near the kitchen entrance, Dusty hung a framed placard. It carries the burden of the forgotten note that sat on his desk all those weeks. It simply reads, "Check the maintenance log, make the call, don't wait." If you found this story compelling, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Moving on to the next one, this story was sent by a viewer. At first, we thought it was just a normal story. But after the ending, everything feels completely different. No more talking, let's start the story. In September 2021, the fog rolling into San Francisco brought no relief to a 34-year-old machine learning engineer named Ethan Callaway. He was drowning in a quiet, insidious kind of exhaustion. His gift for the mathematical architecture of neural networks, well, that was the entire architecture of his identity. But the code he was building, it was beginning to turn on him. Chapter 1. The boundaries dissolve. The problem started gradually, right as the glass and steel offices of the city emptied out. In the pre-pandemic office, there had always been natural signals to stop, the building's HVAC cycling down for the night, the commute home. But now, those signals just disappeared. His laptop was always open, the notifications were always on. A silent, heavy expectation hung in the air of his apartment. There was nowhere to go, and so there was no reason to stop. By mid-2020, Ethan was working between 65 and 75 hours a week. He tracked this time meticulously on a spreadsheet. He just sat there, watching the numbers climb as the days blurred into one long, endless gray stretch. He told himself it was temporary, that once the model reached its benchmarks, things would ease up. But things didn't ease up. Chapter 2. The mind comes apart. The grueling hours remained, but everything else began to erode. He lost 11 pounds between January and June of 2021. It was born from the dietary entropy of a brain with absolutely no bandwidth left to even choose a meal. He just ate, standing over the sink in the dark, blindly consuming whatever required the least decision-making. By September, a harrowing pattern had set in. He was working until 2 in the morning. His alarm went off at 6:30. 4 hours. That's all he got. 4 hours. He was too deep inside the numbers to see what they were actually doing to him. His mere distraction slowly morphed into this dark emotional volatility. Paranoia crept in. The very walls of his apartment felt hostile. He didn't feel like he was doing this to himself anymore. It felt like the world was actively, maliciously attacking him. For 11 days, Ethan had been stuck on a calibration problem, a systematic bias he just could not isolate. And to his deteriorating brain, this technical issue twisted into something monstrous. It attached itself to him. It morphed into undeniable, glaring evidence of a fundamental personal failure. Chapter 3, The Floor Goes Away. The night of September 2nd, 2021. Ethan sat alone in his dark bedroom. The only light in the room was the pale glow of his screen, displaying failing loss curves. 9 p.m., he began staring at the graphs. 1 a.m., he'd made 4 different adjustments. Every single one of them failed. The hours just ticked by in dead silence. And then, at exactly 3:15 a.m., something inside Ethan's mind finally crossed a threshold. Whatever mental reserve he had left simply vanished. The cognitive architecture holding his mind together collapsed completely. The floor just went away. He slowly closed his laptop. He sat paralyzed in his desk chair in the pitch black. Finally, his hand reached out in the dark. He picked up his phone and he called his sister, Grace. When Grace answered, Ethan's words poured out in a frantic, incoherent ramble. He babbled that the calibration problem meant the model was wrong, that 3 years of his life were entirely wasted, that he was very tired, that he wasn't okay. Grace's voice pierced the darkness, sharp and immediate. "Are you safe right now? Are you thinking about hurting yourself?" Ethan gave a chilling, hollow response. "I don't know." Grace ordered him to stay on the line. She kept him tethered to the waking world, talking about their childhood dog, the smell of their grandmother's kitchen, just talking, while she desperately booked the first flight out of Portland. Chapter 4, The Intervention. Grace arrived in San Francisco the very next morning. When Ethan buzzed her into his apartment, she found him frozen on the couch, in the exact same clothes from the night before. He looked at her with this completely empty expression. The psychiatrist's findings later that afternoon were grim. Ethan's emotional regulation was entirely shattered. He was diagnosed with severe burnout, and the immediate prescription wasn't medication. It was profound, protected sleep for a dangerously depleted mind. Then came the terrifying step of actually pulling him away from the machine. Grace made Ethan call his manager. She kept a steady hand on his arm as his voice wavered in the quiet room, making the call, stopping the pipeline, initiating a 6-week leave. The recovery was incredibly volatile. His brain, finally resting, produced a raw, painful emotional state. During therapy, a piercing question exposed the dark root of his terror. What were you afraid would happen if you worked less? It took him sessions to reach the real answer. He'd been terrified that without the output, without the relentless metrics of performance, he would simply cease to exist. Chapter 5, An Early Stopping Criterion. October 18th. Ethan returned to the company on a reduced schedule. On his second day back, he solved the 11-day calibration problem that had broken him. He did it in just 4 hours. Months later, Ethan stood before a stunned room at a UCSF conference. His talk was titled, "The Model That Was Me." He described sitting in the dark, with the floor utterly gone beneath him. He revealed a haunting truth to the silent crowd. Engineers build sophisticated safeguards for machines. They set limits on compute usage, they build checkpoints, they ensure the models don't break. Yet, they go home and run their own minds without monitoring, without limits, until they are utterly destroyed. "We are very good at knowing when our models are overfitting," he told them. "We are terrible at knowing when we are." In the aftermath, Viridian AI implemented mandatory limits, a hard cap on hours to protect the engineers. The system was rebuilt. Ethan eventually left the company to find work with firm boundaries. He had to learn how to be a person who happens to work, rather than a worker who happens to exist. He still sometimes opens his laptop late at night and feels that cold pull of an unfinished problem. But now, he closes it. When asked what advice he would leave for others trapped in that same dark architecture, he paused for a long time, and then he said, "Set an early stopping criterion. and actually stop. Please like and subscribe to support more true stories.
Moving on to the next one. This story was sent by a viewer who wishes to remain anonymous. The incident is so strange that it's hard to tell whether it was real or just a nightmare. No more talking. Let's start the story. In the heart of New Orleans, Magnolia's Southern Table was a revered classic. But behind the walls of this beloved establishment, a catastrophic structural breakdown was quietly taking shape.
My hands remember what to do. My body doesn't trust it anymore. Those are the words of Chef Raymond Thibodeau, a permanent testament to a disaster that fundamentally altered lives in a matter of minutes.
The anatomy of this disaster unfolds in 5 parts: the kitchen at Magnolia's, post-Katrina hidden dangers, the night of the fire, 3 critical safety failures, and the permanent human cost.
Part 1. The kitchen at Magnolia's, the heartbeat of a New Orleans classic.
Chef Raymond Thibodeau was a 51-year-old Cajun who learned to cook in Terrebonne Parish. He'd been the head chef since 2001. His forearms were thick. His hands were so intensely calloused from decades of heat that he could pull a 500-degree cast iron skillet directly off a flame without flinching. He was an absolute master of his environment.
Owner Patricia Fontenot handled the books and the front of house. Raymond completely ran the kitchen operations. She trusted him implicitly. For 6 years, this arrangement worked beautifully. But in the shadows of this implicit trust, incredibly dangerous blind spots were beginning to form.
Part 2. Post-Katrina hidden dangers, compromised systems operating on a tight budget.
After Hurricane Katrina flooded the restaurant in August 2005, Magnolia's closed for 4 months. When they finally reopened, budgets were razor-thin. Lurking above the fryers was the Ansel system, an automatic fire suppression unit designed to flood the hoods with chemical suppressant and simultaneously shut off the gas supply. It was meant to be the ultimate failsafe.
The warning signs began ticking like a clock. October 2006, Raymond reported that the ventilation over the fryers was weak. Smoke hung low, burning the cook's eyes. November 2006, a contractor documented that the exhaust hood was inadequate. February 2007, Raymond begged for a fix, but was told by ownership to wait until April due to cash flow. Administrative delays over a quote set a literal ticking clock.
Part 3. The night of the fire, March 14, 2007. The clock had run out.
It was a Wednesday, and the restaurant was packed. Dinner service started at 5:30 p.m. with a full staff. By 6:40 p.m., the kitchen was roaring. The fryers were running non-stop. At 7:23 p.m., a standard flame reached up from the fry station and touched the grease-laden exhaust hood. The grease caught. Just 1 minute later, at 7:24 p.m., that fire traveled 12 feet inside the interior ductwork. The New Orleans Fire Department wouldn't arrive until 7:27. When the fire started, Raymond did exactly what he was trained to do. He went straight for the Ansel system pull station and yanked the cable. But nothing happened. Realizing the automatic system was dead, Raymond immediately grabbed a Class K fire extinguisher designed specifically to fight commercial kitchen cooking oil fires. He discharged it at the base of the hood. It knocked back the surface flames, but the fire was already racing inside the ductwork, completely out of reach.
At that exact moment, Raymond shouted, "Everybody out, go!" His 28-year-old sous chef, Derek Mountain, threw the master shutoff valve, killing the gas line. The rest of the staff fled out the back. Raymond stayed behind to try and fight the fire, and Derek stayed because he refused to leave Raymond. They lingered in that kitchen for 90 critical seconds.
The fire had been burning right through the drywall and insulation directly above them. Suddenly, the ceiling buckled. A wave of superheated air and liquid fat over 500 degrees Fahrenheit collapsed downward. Raymond, standing near the fry station, was splashed across his right forearm, neck, and face. Derek was further back, but was struck across his left hand as he instinctively raised it to shield his face.
Part 4. 3 critical safety failures. The fire marshal's official findings. It was a cascade of failure across 3 distinct levels. First, grease accumulation. The ducts hadn't been professionally cleaned in over 18 months. Second, a dead suppression system. A post-Katrina contractor had inadvertently severed the Ansel activation line. Because it was never tested, nobody knew the failsafe was dead. Third, inadequate ventilation. The hood's pull capacity was below minimum standards. These 3 elements perfectly aligned.
The district attorney declined to file criminal charges against the owner. Raymond and Derek ultimately filed a civil suit, which was quietly settled in 2010.
14. That is the number of agonizing months it took for Magnolia's to rebuild and reopen. When they did, it was with fully code-compliant equipment. But for the staff who were there that night, the damage was already done.
Part 5. The permanent human cost. Lives altered forever. Raymond suffered third-degree burns, over 22% of his body. He spent 8 months enduring 5 separate, agonizing skin grafting surgeries just to repair the tissue on his arm, neck, and face. Before the fire, sous chef Derek Mouton was the most talented young cook Raymond had ever trained. After, he survived, but he developed complex regional pain syndrome. He manages restaurants now, but he spends his days wearing a compression glove, suffering chronic nerve pain that permanently weakened his grip.
Before the incident, Carlos Vega was a 19-year-old eager to prove himself on a chaotic fry station. The trauma of watching the ceiling collapse and hearing his mentor scream changed his trajectory entirely. Afterwards, he left the culinary industry for good. He became a professional firefighter.
Head chef Raymond Thibodeau was a master whose entire identity was built on 30 years of feeling heat and texture. After the fire, he was permanently scarred and lost sensation in his hands. He tried to go back to the stove, but his body wouldn't let him. Today, he works as a catering consultant, forced to watch from the edges of other people's kitchens.
In 2022, a journalist reached out to Raymond for an interview. This was his only response. I already told that story once, and telling it again won't change what happened to my face.
What hidden risks are accumulating in your workplace while someone waits for a better time to fix them? If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe.